This is Part 2 Episode 162. The temple's great gathering did not allow one to wound or kill the enemy, but summoned beasts were exceptions. Seeing Long Hao-Chen, his sword strike looked about to take the ice orangutan's life. Only when facing it for real could one truly realize the extent reached by his sword intent. Reaching the level of materializing the sword's soul, the eruption of his sword intent reached a quite higher level of power than Qiu Yonghao. That ice orangutan had an indescribable sense of terror, and was instantly pressured to a great extent, and locked into an inescapable state. All it could do was to shout grudgingly, crossing its hands to block the attack. But everyone could tell that the sword strike overflowing with might that came down was really not something he could block. All of this took place just too fast. In Chen Hong Yu's view, Long Hao-Chen was in the end Chen Ying's captain, and wouldn't in the end go immediately for the kill. This ice orangutan he sent actually didn't have much utility, except from hopefully delaying Hao-Chen. But Long Hao-Chen's sudden burst of power not only showed him Hao-Chen's great strength, but moreover caused him to get panicky and hastily accelerate the completion of his spell, totally wrecking his rhythm. But Chen Hong Yu was indignant at Long Hao-Chen's really too fast burst of power, making him already too late for the rescue. This ice orangutan being one of his packed magical beast, in case Long Hao-Chen was to kill it, his strength would get seriously affected. Moreover, a summoner has great emotions towards his packed magical beast. For a moment, Chen Hong Yu couldn't help but become greatly furious, great surges of emotions rising into him. Split in two in a sword strike? Of course not. Long Hao-Chen was the scion of light, not a scion of slaughter. And moreover, he was facing one of his allies from the Temple Alliance, not a demon. When that huge sword looked about to split the ice orangutan, the sword blade was suddenly reversed, the attack turning into using the flat part, beating the ice orangutan's arms. In yesterday's battle against Yang Haoyu, Hao-Chen was completely suppressed cultivation-wise, but the opposite happened today with this ice orangutan, whose spiritual energy was completely suppressed by its opponent. Bang! The ice orangutan's body smashed the stiff ground, fragments of ice splattering on his chest, the defensive magic attached to him getting completely pierced through. Its head took a direct fall, and from the looks, it had completely lost its fighting strength. And that was Long Hao-Chen showing mercy. After breaking the orangutan's arms, his massive sword intent shot up above its head, causing it to lose consciousness. If he really wanted, he had at least 10 means to kill this magical beast of the 10th rank without much effort. With a wave of his hand, an intense bright light gushed out all around Long Hao-Chen, shrouding the whole field in a flash. A sweet-sounding echo came, the light god domain. Right now, he gave off the feeling of going all out, not showing any reserves nor probing. After that huge light sword defeated the ice orangutan, the amplification of the light god domain could be sensed, instantly gaining in substance. Long Hao-Chen waved his right hand, and immediately shot a projectile directly at that light gate. This aside, both Long Hao-Chen's hands were crossed in front of his body, and after the Heart of Eternity pulsed thrice, another white-colored blade flew up, chasing after that huge light sword and directly causing it to turn into an incandescent color. The terrible sword intent even caused cracks to appear on the defensive barrier opposite. The light god domain was not only about domain domination and elemental domination, it caused all Long Hao-Chen's light attribute abilities to gain a terrifying boost. This blow fused sword soul and sword intent in one. Looking at Long Hao-Chen's displayed move from the booths of the warrior temple, Qiu Yonghao finally understood that Long Hao-Chen had been lenient on him that day. Being able to utilize sword soul was not as simple as only owning it. Of course, this was accomplished with the help of the light god domain. After discussing with Yang Haoyu and Chen Zidian, Long Hao-Chen had already returned to train in seclusion for the rest of the previous day and until the matches of today. In just a day, he had gained a whole new understanding of his domain's capabilities. Naturally, his cultivation developed accordingly. His newest comprehension acquired through battle was naturally showing the greatest effects. After his resurrection, Long Hao-Chen's greatest regret was Yating's disappearance. As his heart was smashed into pieces, the spiritual stove fused with her disappeared then, and even the ability of the saint spiritual stove left along with it. In the process of thinking back about Yating, Long Hao-Chen gained a deeper level of understanding towards sword intent, which is how he gained sword soul. At the time he had first made use of sword soul, he faintly became aware that Yating was not dead for real. She seemed to still be existing in a part of his body, but just couldn't be vividly sensed. He believed that as long as his sword soul could grow stronger, there would come a day that he would be able to awaken Yating from her slumbering area. Sword soul, as the name implies, consists of bestowing a soul to one's sword. A sword intent with no sword soul wouldn't last for too long. As a result, an attack from sword intent would frequently be lacking in adaptability. But with a soul in the sword, sword intent gains myriads of variations, making it inevitably far more powerful. In the past, when the holy sword wielder Yi Wushang had attained this realm, he had become the #1 talent in the warrior temple. And now, Long Haochen clearly also attained it. On the Night Temple's lounge, Yang Haohan couldn't help but nod secretly to Long Haochen. The match they had yesterday was mostly a contest of domains. If at that time, Long Haochen had used his sword intent fused with sword soul along with the light god domain, that would be a great threat against him. Only, because the two of them were immersed in a clash of domains, Long Haochen just did not use it. A thunderous roar rang out, and immediately, a four-colored luster came out from that light gate, colliding with Long Haochen's huge sword. Speaking of which, that four-colored radiance were really bizarre. Upon clashing with Long Haochen's huge sword fused with sword intent and sword soul, it not only stopped the advance of the huge sword, but also condensed into four spherical projectiles of different colors. Long Haochen urged out his sword intent, and abruptly, the light god domain shrank, gathering its amplifying effects. And that instant, those four projectiles blowed up. A terrifying blasting force caused instantly massive pressure onto the defensive barrier outside, to the extent of forcing Chen Zidian to once again intervene personally. Long Haochen's immense light sword was smashed to thin pieces, as he was pushed 100 meters away alongside the divine unicorn in a deep shock. The light gate enlarging, a massive figure rushed out from within. That was nothing else but Chen Hong Yu's contracted beast, the four-headed chimera. Seeing that four-headed chimera, Long Haochen almost had the unconscious urge of summoning Haoyue. In front of Haoyue's blood suppression, this four-headed chimera should not be of any use. But very rapidly, Long Haochen dispelled these thoughts, because he sensed that this four-headed chimera seemed to be growing to a whole different level from before. The first change was relevant to Long Haochen's previous attack, which already exerted all his strength. Even a powerhouse of the 3rd or 4th rank of the 9th step would find it strenuous to respond. That was an attack mixing both sword intent and sword soul, but it was simply received like that by the four-headed chimera. It was far from being as powerful previously, and the difference was really very wide. The other change was that in the eyes of this four-headed chimera, Long Haochen could see a great wrath and extremely fierce human nature. That's. Without leaving Long Haochen the time to ponder over the issue, the four-headed Medusa launched a powerful attack, all four heads spitting breath simultaneously, not aimed directly at Long Haochen, but gathering in midair to turn into a four-colored ball shot sharply at Long Haochen. In the meantime, a four-colored radiance of blue, red, yellow and green instantly spread out from the four-headed Medusa. That was actually a four-elemental domain. Chen Yinga was in great alarm seeing this scene, murmuring, "Wow, Grandpa, to actually have achieved contracted fusion, he really has already broken through the 3rd rank of the 9th step." Lin Xin asked curiously, "What is a contracted fusion?" Chen Yinga replied, "That's the fusion between a summoner and his contracted beast. Grandpa's current strength has made one with the four-headed chimera Xingxuan. But the downside is that he cannot utilize any more summoning magic that way. However, Xingxuan's strength has been greatly upgraded, and is now fully under Grandpa's control. Her abilities have risen to a next level. Haven't you seen the domain Xingxuan has just unleashed?" "Pooh-hoo." Lin Xin suddenly laughed. Chen Yinga asked in puzzlement, "What are you laughing about, Hasdrugbro?" Lin Xin laughingly replied, "Oh, I suddenly realized that if you rise to the 3rd rank of the 9th STPE, you will have this contracted fusion ability. Won't that turn you into a pig? Waha, so funny. You." Chen Yinga erupted in fury, fiercely pinching off Lin Xin's waist. The others already couldn't help but burst out in laughter as well. That's actually exactly the case. McDull being just a little pig, if Chen Yinga undergoes contracted fusion with it, that will really turn her into a pig. In the stadium, Long Haochen was able to sense abnormalities in the four-headed chimera, but hadn't guessed that this was a contracted fusion between Chen Hong Yu and Xingxuan. Four-elemental chaotic magic. Although that was just a simple spit, the authenticity of its might was already proved. Long Haochen didn't dare tarry. Raising his right hand, a bright white glow came out instantly in the empty space, bombarding that four-elemental cage. Instant cast, Light of Trial. At the time this Light of Trial burst out, it emitted a clear and all-around spreading sound. All around it, series of angels were faintly seen revolving. In the midst of a loud explosion, the four-elemental cage ruptured, and although its massive blasting force engulfed the Light of Trial, it didn't come flying toward Long Haochen's side until the end. In the light god domain, all light magic would instantly gather into Long Haochen's possession. Even a forbidden spell would work that way. In the meantime, the exhaustion of his spiritual energy was minimized to the greatest extent. After Light of Trial was utilized, the horn of the divine unicorn let out another glow of divine light, causing Long Houchen's body to turn multicolored. From the looks of it, their combination seemed like a divine tool. Long Houchen's right hand was pointed forward once again, dispersing a mystic white halo from the light god domain. A strange scene followed, the white ring of light emitted by the four-headed Chimera Xingxuan unexpectedly melting like snow. After which, it did not keep spitting at all, stabilizing their own domain with full focus. That's elemental obliterating halo? Chen Hong Yu was in a state of shock. Never did he expect elemental obliterating halo could possibly attain such a level, to even be able to weaken a domain. This was definitely not merely a simple elemental obliterating halo, but should be an elemental obliterating halo combined with a god's descent. With the boost from the light god domain, elemental obliterating halo already approached the forbidden spell level. Moreover, it had great restraining effects on elemental abilities, making it a perfect counter against Xingxuan's domain. Against Yang Haoyu, whose cultivation far exceeded his own, Long Houchen's light god domain could only withstand domain clashes, but in front of Chen Hong Yu, with whom the gap of cultivation was not so wide, he had the opportunities to show the various uses of this light god domain. An elemental obliterating domain approached the forbidden spell grade, yet consumed only 10,000 spiritual energy out of him. Just 3 beats of his Heart of Eternity were sufficient to replenish these 10,000 spiritual energy. The elemental obliterating halo's effects were even greater than in his expectations. Long Houchen suddenly had a flash of understanding. This time, he extended his finger to the sky, as the Heart of Eternity in his chest pulsed rapidly. One could clearly see a golden halation spread out at an astonishing speed from Houchen's body, clear proof of an extremely high spiritual energy output. The light god domain pulsed abruptly, and its scope suddenly became a flat zone, encompassing a circular area, and looking the same as a spinning woman in long skirt, minus the sexy areas. The round golden area became more and more substantial, and in a wave of Long Houchen's right hand, the now spherical light god domain unexpectedly broke away from his body. He was visibly quite a bit tired, faint traces of sweat visible dripping from his forehead. When the light god domain separated itself from his body, Long Houchen's Heart of Eternity's pulse reached an extremely high speed, to the extent that even the outward spectators could hear its beat. Ring upon ring of multicolored light was also released from the divine unicorn, giving its all to boost Long Houchen. Just what kind of ability could that be, for it to take up such a massive spiritual energy? The most startled of all remained Chen Hong Yu, who had believed that Xingxuan's four-element domain should be able to suppress Long Houchen's light god domain. But when the clash came for real, he realized that this judgment was mistaken. Indeed, the combination of the 4 natural elements should be superior to light, but that's only in terms of overall efficiency. Long Houchen's light god domain was just too pure, entailing light element of peak purity, which already put it on a different standard compared to the 4-element domain's elements. The release of elemental obliterating halo then suppressed his domain at once, and this time, Long Houchen unexpectedly stretched his domain to a huge diameter of 100 meters. Just what could he be planning? The suppressive force from the light god domain disappeared at once, as it stopped conflicting with the 4-element domain. Yet, in its place, Chen Hong Yu had a feeling of increasing danger. The 4-element Chimera Xingxuan snarled from all its heads, spitting 4 lightning bolts, all of which went off to bombard Long Houchen. This was Chen Hong Yu's trump technique. It should not be underestimated because of its short time of preparation. This strike alone used up over a third of the spiritual energy of the fusion between Xingxuan and him. It already surpassed an ordinary forbidden spell in power, while also stretching over 30 meters. The golden circle's edge made contact with that 4-element bolt. A bizarre chirping sound suddenly rang out throughout the whole stadium, immediately followed with that 4-elemental bolt getting severed and forming whirls around the circlic area. That bolt, which should be of incomparable power, suddenly broke down into 4 bolts of different colors in the shape they had before merging together. The next instant, it all went extinct in the midst of those chirping sounds. In the meantime, that golden fog of light slowly advanced, making contact with the shrunken 4-element domain. A terrible scene emerged. The 4-element domain was suddenly on the edge of getting cut apart. A huge unmanned expanse was filled with light and cut through, and from the elemental clashes, the 4-element domain continuously let out fierce rumbles, each of which caused a 4-colored fog to disperse from the 4-headed chimera, which had to withdraw as a result. Right now, those powerhouses of the 9th step all saw clearly the reason behind Long Houchen's sphere of light, revolving at extremely fast speed, and shaking abundantly. Even more terrifyingly, it had effects similar to the forbidden spell-level elemental obliterating halo. One could wonder how terrifying its cutting forces level reached. This was clearly a domain technique. Li Zhengji lost his voice. After Long Haochen got suppressed by Yang Haoyu's domain technique the day before, today he showed a pleasant surprise to everyone present here, a domain technique emerging from the light god domain. If Long Haochen had told them that this domain technique had actually emerged just now, in a flash of inspiration, who knew if someone would believe in that? But that was just how that happened. Moreover, Long Haochen clearly sensed that if he could compress this spherical area into a smaller area, this domain technique would reach an even more terrifying level of power. The principles behind this domain technique were simple. It used Long Haochen's self-created light ripples as well as elemental obliterating halo manipulated through the light god domain. This process was simple to describe, but achieving it was extremely difficult. If not for Long Haochen's light god physique and perfect manipulation of his light god domain, how could he make use of a technique emerging from his domain, thus creating his own domain technique? At this point of the match, the victor was already determined. Although Chen Hong Yu and Xingxuan's contracted fusion was a powerful thing, they were suppressed domain-wise, and moreover their spiritual energy recovery was no match against Long Haochen. Adding to that this domain technique of a higher notch of his, he had no other choice than to concede. Rapid fluctuations kept fluctuating, as the terrible rotating light blade was nearing him. Chen Hong Yu was actually really unwilling to concede in the competition. Still, the words "I concede" came out from Xingxian's four large heads, giving Long Haochen quite a surprise. At this time Long Haochen finally understood that Chen Hong Yu turned out to have used some mystic technique to fuse with his contracted beast. This way, even if Hao Yue was called out, the blood suppression's effects would not be as formidable. Turning back, the chimera dejectedly made way into the gate of light, and the next instant, Chen Hong Yu came out, an unsightly expression on his face. As someone regarding his own face with great importance, he really couldn't accept being vanquished by a youngster such as Long Haochen. That was really hard to bear deep in his heart. But even so, what could he do about it? It's not as if he was even able to beat the other party. "What's the name of your previous domain technique?" Chen Hong Yu asked gloomily. Long Haochen was startled. Domain technique? Oh, right. That previous flash of understanding was nothing else than a domain technique. I call it Divine Light Waltz. Divine Light Waltz? Chen Hong Yu let out a snort, returning on the side of the spiritual temple without even turning his head back. Sanshui Popo accompanied her husband back, and couldn't help but laugh upon looking at his flushed look. Let it be. Why get angry with youngsters? You're not even the first one he has beaten. Even Yang Haoyu and Qiu Yonghao have lost. There's no loss of face. Chen Hong Yu snorted. What else than a loss of face could that be? Do you know how old he is? Sanshui Popo had a glaring look. What are you enthusiastic about? Do you really need me to tell you that having an old age should not be a premise for ambition? What's even the use of living for 100 empty years? You old thing, hurry back. Listen to me and don't cause troubles for the children. Chen Hong Yu felt a chill. Although Sanshui Popo's words were unpleasant to him, it called attention to him. With no doubt, at this session of the temple's great gathering, Long Haochen and Bright Glimmer of Hope had all undoubtedly showed displays of strength that would give them a decisive position in the new alliance, especially this Long Haochen. And Chen Ying'er being his comrade, her husband was reminding himself that he shouldn't be a cause for their unwaverable friendship to get swayed. Thinking back about how Long Haochen had not hesitated to confront the dragon rider demon god Asmodeus for Chen Ying'er's sake, Chen Hongyu's complexion became gentler at once. However, he was still unwilling to admit defeat in the verbal arguments. Ying'er is really unlucky. If not for a little scoundrel called Long Haochen, our family's Ying'er should be the leader in her generation. There was no mistake in what he said, except that this was not only the case for Long Haochen alone, but also Kia. Chen Ying'er was also a prideful talent of innate internal spiritual energy exceeding 90. But due to her disposition, her mastery differed to some extent from the likes of Long Haochen or Kia. This was a whole generation of talents, and moreover, these extremely outstanding talents were all gathered together. Long Haochen immediately shut his eyes after returning, silently contemplating on his previous use of the Divine Light Waltz. This was his very first time using that ability after instantaneous comprehension, as well as his very first domain technique. Only when he really put a domain technique into use, could that domain's formidable strength come out to a truly great extent. Chen Hong Yu fusing with his four-headed chimera was already nearing the peak of the third rank in strength, but was left without means in front of his domain technique, ultimately able only to concede. Only, Long Houchen's control over this divine light waltz was still too weak. He was unable to even guarantee that he could utilize it another time. Since he had a flash of comprehension of it, he couldn't let it slip. His powerful light god physique once again showed a great level of decisiveness. The competition still kept going, and once again, the greatest winner of these fourth rounds was still Bright Glimmer of Hope, having already achieved 3 victories by the time of the 5th match out of 12. Moreover, they had some individuals who had yet to appear, these people being Kia, Chen Yinga and Sima Xian. Sima Xian's displays finally came to an end. Facing one of the auxiliary heads of the Mage Temple, a domain-wielding powerhouse, he may have at least put up a fight if he had the gigantic ball of light at his disposal, but unfortunately, without his weapon in hand, though he may have inconvenienced the enemy with his thunder-manipulating spiritual stove, he was still pushed out of the field in the end, thus eliminating one person among Bright Glimmer of Hope's ranks. In the 8th of the 12 matches of the 4th round, the light of selection finally illuminated Kia, her opponent being one mage from the Mage Temple. Her figure flashing, Kia floated out immediately. The instant her footsteps pushed onto the ground, she had already shifted in the field. Speaking of which, Kia's luck was much better than Long Houchen in the first 3 individual rounds. She did not have any tough battles. Even in the 3rd round, she had run into a rather weak opponent, passing through this ordeal with no difficulty and without even using her domain. Actually, even Sima Xian had a higher reputation in this gathering. When Sima Xian had just lost his match, the spectators both in the stadium and outside let out series of regretful sighs. They really found his coarse and wild fighting style very attractive. Of course, Kia was not really inconspicuous either. At least, since the previous day those powerhouses who had caught sight of the Tower of Eternity did not see her that way. However, the outsiders did not get to catch sight of that scene. Kia's opponent was a veteran mage, clad in a simple black gown and with clear silver hair. His eyes were really characteristic, devoid of the slightest blemish, they contrasted with the wrinkles on his aged face. But these purple eyes looked really similar to a lot of noble demons. This old mage was named Mo Wu, and even within the Mage Temple, very few were familiar with him, to speak nothing of the external temples. He had a title of Elder from the Mage Temple, and hadn't shown any prominent display, achieving victories without any flashy moves. Up to this 4th round, Kia's only impression on this mysterious Mo Wu was the darkness element he wielded. No one would view the members of Bright Glimmer of Hope in contempt because of their young age anymore. Upon his entrance, Mo Wu's downcast chant reverberated immediately. Kia didn't go invisible, spreading out the huge grey spiritual wings on her back, which turned white the next instant. In a split second, she arrived right in front of Mo Wu. In terms of instant acceleration, even the 6-winged Long Houchen was no match for Kia. In the previous match, Kia's matches were concluded with overwhelming speed. This mage Mo Wu was visibly already prepared. Continuously chanting as a dark purple triangle arose, his body suddenly disappeared right when Sia came in front of him. Kia was slightly alarmed. Could this dark mage have used some instant shift? In fact, this match did not permit the use of any equipment. The next instant, this mage Mo Wu already appeared in another direction, with a spinning dark purple triangle visible underneath him. What technique is that? This was the first time for Kia to see such a thing. That was very clearly a self-created technique. She obviously couldn't let the opponent complete his magic. With a cold snort, her body flashed once again, but this time, with a lift of her right arm, a huge pure white sickle had appeared in her palm. The sickle of the god of death couldn't be used, but could be imitated. After all, that was the weapon she held with the greatest mastery. The sickle of the god of death swept at the air, immediately causing a spatial crack to appear. It was a small crack, but the instant it appeared, an essence of some unknown element immediately gathered, and that crack actually displayed a massive attractive power. Not only that, but the sickle of the god of death in Kia's hand swept at 6 angles, where similar cracks appeared, stirring up all the elemental essence in the stadium and causing a state of spatial chaos. She did not know what the opponent did, but a darkness element mage cannot possibly execute teleportations, which means that some spatial magic was surely mixed in. Stirring spatial chaos was obviously to prevent her counterpart from teleporting. All of this happened very fast. Seeing the flickers of pure white colors originating from Kia, Mo Wu's expression changed slightly. The next instant, Kia reappeared in front of him, the sickle of the god of death flashing in her hand and slowly hacking at him. Its blade edge carried a sharp, highly invasive aura. But shockingly, Mo Wu did not draw back, but stepped up instead, pointing his right hand at the empty space, where a purplish-black ray took shape. Just as if the air had become his drawing board, he drew a specific imprint with his hand. What Kia sensed was completely different from the onlookers. With these gestures, Mo Wu's body immediately looked illusory, and countless Mo Wu shapes arose in front of her, causing his opponent's murderous spirit which had locked onto him to become fainter. In a white flash, that purplish-black ray disappeared, and this instant, Mo Wu's magic was completed. Purplish-black pillars appeared out of nowhere and surrounded Kia's body in a flash, turning into a circular cage trapping her within. Hell's Cage, a powerful darkness attribute spell of the 9th step. Kia's sickle was swept horizontally, but only passed through, as if there was no collision at all. But when she tried to rush out with her body, she immediately felt an acute sting spread all over her body as the massive darkness element directly penetrated inside her body. That's... Kia was startled, but had the same calm disposition as usual. She did not panic in front of this kind of situation. Her sickle of the god of death disappearing, she placed her hands in front of her chest, her eyes even closing down. She seemed to be sensing something, looking for a hole in the Hell's Cage. Seeing his Hell's Cage being so effective, Mo Wu couldn't help but reveal a dim smile. As he kept up the incantation, some purplish-black halations spread underneath his feet, and very quickly, these halations took a solid form, ascending over his body to take a shape close to an altar. Raising his right hand, a black staff appeared in Mo Wu's hands. Although only formed with spiritual energy, it made him look extremely sumptuous and mighty right now. Purplish-black rays circulated around the top of the staff, turning into a magnificent mage gown covering him, and instantly causing his demeanor to gain greatly in might. A terrifying pressure arose itself around his body, a large area of purplish-black clouds revolving around the altar he had created. As these purplish-black halations fluttered, some electric light could faintly be seen on it. Since when did the Mage Temple have another powerhouse like that? This was clearly the power of a domain. Those from the other 5 temples couldn't help but cry out in alarm. This Mo Wu's attainments and cultivation were far higher than they expected. Not only was Kia trapped by this mage, but he moreover displayed a domain, which was clearly purely a boosting domain. His next magic would surely gain an impressive deal of might. Some purplish-black symbols started to drift around the altar as his downcast chant reverberated through the whole stadium. One could faintly see the ground turn unwittingly into that purplish-black color. The cracks left earlier by Kia also closed entirely. Destructor of darkness, ruler of darkness. Descend, dark sovereign. As his chant went on, Mo Wu's eyes shot up with purple electric light, and a purple hexagram appeared in front of his altar. There, a massive image started to take shape, drifting inside that hexagram. It was a human figure measuring about 5 meters, clad in a dark purple armor, and with a pair of large curved horns extending from the back of its head. But as that individual was masked, his face was not visible. In his right hand was a huge sword, gushing out with purplish-black light. Just as he appeared, he gave off an incorporeal pressure. Even the defensive barrier's defense gave off a kind of stifling feeling. What a powerful dark mage! Lin Xin couldn't help but remark in alarm. This was clearly a formidable dark mage, who had furthermore summoned a dark sovereign of terrifying strength, whose might could even compare with the post-fusion 4-headed chimera of Chen Hong Yu. This video will end here.